The views and opinions expressed in this episode are solely those of the host and guests. They are intended to spark thought and open dialogue, not as any kind of formal diagnosis or treatment. They do not in any way reflect the views or opinions of NMAEA, Propel, or NMAEA. So what would you want to tell the field about being neurodiverse that neurotypicals may not realize? Perhaps, how can our neurotypical counterpart work with neurodiverse practitioners and even students to better connect with us so that we can collaborate together as a field?
I'm going to let you start, Matt, since I stole all your ideas last time.
It's all good. So I think one thing, and this is something that I'm doing just personally, and I try it, and during my presentation at the conference, I may have exaggerated a few of my behaviors, but I did it for a reason. But we need to normalize this, and our neurotypical colleagues need to normalize it for us as practitioners and professionals. It's normal. Neurodivergence is normal. We're okay with this. So that's one thing that we can do. But we need to normalize it for students. Because I stopped being afraid of who I was and I acknowledge it, it allows me to acknowledge it with students. And because I acknowledge my own neurodivergence with students, I tell my students every time I see a squirrel. But by normalizing it, it's allowing other individuals, whether it be students or other practitioners, to be okay with who they are and allowing themselves to do the things that they need to do to be successful. Just accept that we're different. Just accept that we may not think the same way you do. Accept that there are going to be those times that we're going to be passionate about something and we're going to be fixated on it. And be okay with that. Help us navigate it. If we're on you asking 100 questions about something, just roll with it. Let us gather the information we need, but also use our superpowers to your benefit as well. If you know that we don't hyperfixate on something, if you give it to us and you really need the answer right away, come to us. Just say, hey, I really need you to do this for us. Because if you give me a reason to do it, and it's going to benefit, whether it be for me, it's always the students and the org, but students come first. But if it's something that's really going to benefit my students or our students in any way, shape, or form, I will fixate on it. I will find the solution. I will find the answer. So lean into our superpowers. Lean into those things that we do so well because we do things a little different.
Yes. And to feed off of that, Matt, you brought up RSD, which is the rejection sensitivity. It kind of goes along with that. I want to be liked. I want to do a good job. So give me those challenges. Let me do that for you. Let's work together. And yes, use me in a way that's going to benefit the program, the community, the students, whatever. I think also in that you said, keeping me engaged and keeping me on task. I do get bored easily, but if you add a motivator for me, whether it is the reason why or competition's a good one for me. It's not good for everyone. Some people, are a little crazy. I'm not. I can lose. But if I have a chance of winning, I want to do that. I want to win for us. And when I look good, my boss, my team, my school, my program, they look good. And so I am going to really try to make all of us look good because I don't want to be rejected. I'm going to put my all into that. And, I like to win because that's a dopamine thing. Give me that chance to, take it to the boss and be like, look at what I did. I want to be able to do that. And I'm all in. This podcast, I'm like, ooh, that'll be fun. And that'll be a fun way to to teach people about me, but also like it's a new thing that people I think will appreciate. So
I'm looking at the Venn diagram.
Uh-huh.
It's staring me down right now because it's right above RSD. We create novelty. If it's something that's not been done in the field, if it's something that your program hasn't done, if it's something that doesn't have a lot of research behind it, we love novelty. Give us those novel things. Because we will figure out how to make it work.
Absolutely. On the same note, though, don't kill it with negativity. But because if you come at my idea and say, oh, well, we tried that, or, we've always done it this way, and you're negative or blasé about it, that's going to kill my urge to do it. And then it's gone. That goes into the pile of things that will never, ever happen.
So as soon as you reject it, it's that rejection sensitivity. As soon as you reject it, okay, I'm dysphoric now. I'm not going to think about it anymore.
And then you come back a month later and you're like, well, why didn't you do that? And it's like, you rejected it.
Because I told you.
Whether you meant to or not, you did. So I think another piggybacking off of something that you said a lot earlier is accepting us for who we are and realizing that we're not trying to be disrespectful. We're not trying to be impolite. We're really just trying to figure out, and we might be passionate. That might be why we're loud. But I'm not trying to be argumentative in any way. I come across that way, but I'm really not meaning to.
The word that it's come across before, the word that people sometimes use for me is condescending.
Oh.
And I'm going to be honest, yes, I hear it, but it's not intentional. It is never intentional. It's just the way, it's that passion in me. It's the way I'm talking. It's not that I'm trying to be condescending. It's not that I'm trying to be disrespectful.
Right.
It's just the way my brain is processing the information and communicating the information at that moment. When I realize, once I start hearing it myself, then I go into that emotional sensitivity and I start feeling bad. And then all of a sudden, I have no spoons because I used all my spoons on my emotions.
Right.
But it is that rejection sensitivity and it is that emotional sensitivity sometimes that will hurt us.
Wow, you guys, this is so great. Absolutely, I love it. I think the general theme of this right now is just perhaps for practitioners out there, neurotypicals, is try to have a little patience and understanding that the way you're thinking is not always how other people think. And just have that patience, and also try to expect that maybe something might be unexpected. I know that can be really hard for people, but I feel like I'm at a point right now in my career where I really am given free rein to try new stuff all the time. I feel really grateful for that. It's like I'm letting my neurodivergent flag fly because this podcast was my idea. And I tried to get it off the ground for so long. So I was like, no, adult ed people need to hear each other. We only see each other at conferences. Even then we don't. Let's talk about our experiences and learn from each other. It's just there's so much value here. And you guys gave such really wonderful, truly valuable thoughts, and I just so appreciate it. April, did you have something to say?
I do have one thing that I think is really important, is that it is often in my research, I've found that, I don't know how you would say this, I'm still learning, female at birth or female presenting often display their neurodivergence differently than males. And I think that's really important, because a lot of times in males, for whatever reason, partially it's more kind of, I guess, in your face. Women have been trained or whatever to mask it better. And so you don't realize what's happening in their brain. So I think that that's a really important thing, and there could probably be an entire podcast on that in and of itself.
Oh, definitely. I think it has to do with genetics. I also think it has a lot to do with socialization. Women,
yes, and environment, yeah.
Yes, and environment too. I think generally speaking, and we're always going to have like, ifs, buts, and whens, but generally AFAB, so that's what you were trying to get at, right? Like assigned female at birth, women, whatever you guys want, whatever people use, is generally socialized to be more accommodating and to downplay certain things, where men, again, AMAB men generally are taught that their needs come out in different ways, and like they're going to be taken care of in different ways, and women are generally they're not the ones taken care of so much. It's like they're taking care of others, so children, men. So like I think that's part of it, is like men are just so more easily recognizable, and now we're seeing how different that is now. So we're bringing names to this.
Yes, it's also where the research has been focused.
Oh yeah,
so that's a big deal too.
Absolutely. And
we spend so much time looking at differences in our thinking and our neuroprocessing, but we do tend to focus certain things on certain genders, like depression. We always think about depression in more assigned female at birth terms. We don't look at it the same way as depression in men. My depression, when I finally realized it, my depression was coming out as anger. And that is typical of men who are depressed. Our depression comes out as anger. So the same thing happens in neurodivergence, because I personally worked with kids with neurodivergence. My autistic male students were very, very different in their behaviors than my autistic female students. Were there a lot of similarities? Yes, but there were some differences. Same thing with ADHD. I see it all the time, where it's easier to spot, for me at least, it's actually easier for me to spot a female with ADHD than it is for me to spot a male with ADHD. And it's because that hyperactivity normally just associate with male children. Like we just have more energy.
Right.
So it's just the way we're thinking about these things. And we do need to do more research, especially with assigned female at birth and neurodivergence, because a lot of that focus has been on assigned male at birth.
Yeah.
Well, we also have to consider the racial component too, and cultural.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
So
the place where I got diagnosed, Wilderwood, a part of the reason why they asked for so much information is I think they're working on developing a way to diagnose non-binary and female, like a new way to diagnose, because it needs those different those different questions, those different methods. So they actually sent a bunch of resources, and some of it was books. And I read 2 of them so far because I just went into a deep dive. And the first one was called Neurotribe. So it was more for autistic. It's basically like a deep dive into the history of autism, how it was, like the thought process behind it, the psychology, like why things are the way they are. And a lot of the patients where these autistic traits come from, it came from middle-class white families, right? And the reason why is because those are the people that are recognizing and have the money to pay for that. So that's why it was actually known as a middle-class disorder at first. It's such, like, there's some troubling stuff in it too, especially when it goes into, the Nazi period. But it really helped me contextualize why the thought processes were the way they were and why it's changed. In addition, I also, the second book I just finished is called Unmasking Autism. And Unmasking Autism was about recognizing how brown and Black people who are neurodivergent have had so much struggles and not as much resources, and also are in more danger when having the traits or the symptoms or stimming is dangerous, especially for Black men. So the author also goes into ways to just be more accepting of yourself and how to unmask. That's why it's called Unmasking Autism. And I think those 2 books, reading them back to back, have really kind of helped me identify where I'm at, why I'm at this place, because I'm not white and I am a fab, assigned female at birth. So it's like why there wasn't help. Basically, I went through this phase after being diagnosed as almost a grieving phase. It's like, why did no one notice for 30 something years? And why did it have to be me? And then there was like that anger and that pain. And then now it's like, well, you know what? I wasn't a middle class white guy. No one was they were just noticing I was like kind of weird and misbehaving and I talked too much, but now there's time and there's hope that these next generations are going to have those resources that they need. And with that being said, I lied about the last question. The final is resources. So I just named 2 books that I felt like was really helpful. Also, the place where I got my diagnosis, note that they only diagnosed. It's not a therapy place. But if you go in person, you get to see horses. If not, they also do Zoom calls. If you need a diagnosis and you have $500, Wilderwood Ranch, absolutely. Really, I can't speak their praises enough. They were very accommodating. But those are like the 3 different resources I have. Or general category: diagnosis and book. Books. Do you guys have like 1 or 2 resources that you would like to share that have helped you in your neurodivergent journey?
One of mine that actually led me to thinking about the autism part of who I am, or I suspect, is a podcast that's called The Loudest Girl in the World. And it's Lauren Ober, and it talks about her experience being diagnosed and how that how that affected her. So it was a really good listen. And when I was listening to it, I was like, oh, that's me. And so I really connected to that. And that was The Loudest Girl in the World. And then another resource, and this is, I met with a psychiatrist. I'm not sure what his designation is, what his title is. But he was in Taos, and he himself is on the autism spectrum, and he was open to diagnosing. So I can give you that information as well. I don't know what his schedule is like, but I was able to meet with him. The way he did his screening was a little bit differently than what you experienced. But yeah, so that's another. I was told by my therapist that it was really hard to find someone to diagnose here in New Mexico. And so when I found him, I was like, oh. And so that was novel. But now that you have someone different, and then he's in Taos, he does everything over Zoom.
Awesome. Yeah. Whatever the psych something, but that's excellent. Thank you. Matt, are you ready to share?
Of course. So I know April brought this up really early on, but I think it's an amazing resource that we haven't tapped into the way we can. TikTok. There's so much on social media, whether it be TikTok, Instagram, Reddit, Facebook, and Twitter are old. We don't care about it. But Instagram, Reddit, TikTok, YouTube, there is a ton of stuff out there. And in fact, like one of the things that I do all the time, and Nadia does it too, is we'll send stuff to each other. She's not on TikTok, I'm not on Instagram, so we cross our social media platforms that way. But there are a lot of things out there, especially within social media, especially if you're just looking for something small and digestible, really, really quick. I can't recommend those enough. Make sure, though, that you're looking at creators who aren't spreading false information, of course. Although I haven't seen too much on ADHD and autism as far as false information, other than some of the vaccine stuff. But as far as like doctors explaining things, individuals with ADHD and other neurodivergent conditions explaining things, you're going to learn and pick up quite a bit. It's also helped me recognize certain behaviors within myself that really fall into play. And in fact, it was something that I shared with Nadia, but there were some common symptoms amongst neurodivergent people. And as soon as I heard that and realized that yeah, I have 4 of those 5 conditions. That's when I re-accepted my ADHD. It allowed me to say, hey, I am neurodivergent. I am ADHD. It's okay. So seek out those resources in the way that you digest things best. Nadia, I know for you, a lot of times it's books. You're definitely an avid reader. So if you're an avid reader, go find the books. If you're not a reader, you're more of a video person, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. There's so much out there. And then the other thing I was going to say, kind of with what you guys were talking about with diagnosticians, it is hard to find a good diagnostician in New Mexico, but they do exist. So if you are fortunate enough to have insurance, a lot of times insurance will cover these things. It's just going to take time. So if you suspect that you yourself as a practitioner may be not neurodivergent, feel free to reach out to me. I'm sure April and Nadia will also say the same thing. Feel free to reach out to us. We have experience, we have knowledge, and we're all educators. So that means we want to share. So if you do have those questions, if you're not sure where to turn or not sure whether or not a resource is legit, things like that, feel free to reach out to us because we're more than happy to help you better understand what's going on as well.
Oh man, what a wonderful note to end on. Guys, thank you both so much. I had so much fun. And so I'm really just grateful that we got to have this conversation. Yeah, it was just really great. And thank you again. Thank you guys so much for just being raw today, just really being open. I think this is just, these conversations need to happen. And
Yes.
I really do. So again, thank you guys so much. You both have a great day. Take care of
Matt's
yourselves.
microphone died. Thank you. You too. Bye, Nadia.
Bye.